Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Welcome to Tuesday and welcome to my YouTube channel. I thought I'd pop by and create another project. Now we're really into autumn now, and it's Halloween on Friday. Not that my children are little anymore, but we used to do a lot for Halloween, but not so much now. But I thought I'd create sort of an autumny project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a piece of Pink Frog super smooth card 4 by 6 inches, and this is back in stock now. My other card that's out of stock is on order, so should hopefully be here soon. So I'm going to use a small acrylic block, and I'm going to use some of my small distress oxides, and I'm going to start with Crackling Campfire because that seems like a rather particularly nice autumn colour. So what I'm going to do is just add some of that Crackling Campfire to my little acrylic block, and then I think we'll have a little bit of Rusty Hinge. So let's have a little bit of Rusty Hinge. And then we'll have a little bit of the mustard seed. Don't worry about contaminating your colours, you can easily wipe those off. And then I think I'm going to have a little bit of Hickory Smoke, just to give it that sort of moody feel. And I probably need more than one piece of card, to be honest, because you'll probably get a second generation as well. So we'll probably need, let's just move those out of the way, just so they're not all there. So we'll make sure we've got another piece of super smooth card because we're bound to have a second generation print. So let's just put that over the white card, then you can see all the squares I've got on there. So I'm just going to spritz this with water, and I'm giving it a really good spritzing. So I can just take my time, there's no rush. And that's what I love about doing techniques like this, is you don't have to rush what you're doing. You can just take your time. So I'm just going to sort of let the excess tip off on there. And then I'm going to just add this to my to my card. And I'm just going to give that a little bit of time. Obviously we can press this so that that all moves, and you can see we've not got any of those squares that I had on there because I added quite a bit of water, so we don't have any of those squares on there, which is perfect. I do want them back. I knew I'd want the colours back, but I just wanted them out of the way. What I'd like to do is not lift it up too soon, because I did one here on my last Facebook Live, and this was the second generation print, and we left it on there to do its thing, and it's just turned out beautiful. So it works lovely. So you just have to be a little bit patient in giving this a little bit of time. Just don't rush what you're doing. But I would suggest that you always have a spare piece of card on one side for your second generation print. And you can see I'm just giving this some time, because if I press this, you'll know if it's stopped moving, because the ink won't move when you press. If you press and it still moves, it means there's still some moisture in there, like there. There's still some moisture in there that's not absorbed into the card, because you can still move it. Now, if I lift it up to, oh, bear with me, the door. Typical when I start a video. Bear with me. As I always say with my videos, you can't make it up. I started the video now because I knew that I was having a delivery between 3 and 4. So I am 5 minutes 18 seconds into my video, and guess what? The delivery turns up 2 hours early. You can't make it up. You really can't. Oh, trying to plan. But the good thing is my watercolour palettes are back in stock. Yay! Right, let's just give that a little bit of time. And now, can you see there? Let me just lift that up. Can you see it's moving? Can you see the paint moving? I'm going to press that back down. Mainly because I want to keep the ink. So if you lift it really quickly, all your ink will just end up in a little ridge. But you can see. But the longer you give it, the better it is. We'll just go for it now. Wonderful. Just look at them colours. Oh, it does make me happy. It really does. So we've got a little bit of colour on here. So let's just add that to my card. Now, there's not much colour on there because I allowed it to absorb onto here. Now, what we can do is we can double up. So, if you want a little bit more colour, say we want a little bit more of, maybe a bit more of the crackling campfire. So I wanted a little bit more of crackling campfire. You can add a little bit of crackling campfire. And say I want to do a little bit of red as well. So I'll use the lumberjack plaid. So we've got a bit of red, but can you see how little I'm putting on there? So we've just got a bit of red on here. And I'm just going to let it roll off because I don't want all that moisture, just want little touches of colour. So what I can do is I can line this back up and then I can just add, can you see there's still moisture on my acrylic block because that's what I want. I want the moisture to react with the oxides. So I'm just going to hold that down and you can see that it's spreading, the water is. That will just add to the inks oxidising. Now, when I'm creating, I always like to enjoy myself, so I just take my time. And I'm a great believer in adding layers. I always think layers will just give a little bit more oomph to the design. Can you see how much that one's moving? The moisture in there. And the reason it's moving more now is because obviously the card is slightly bent as well because you've got that moisture in that card. But it's just about giving it time to do its thing. Okay, quite happy with that. So I've just got, let's bring this in here and just add. You can see there's hardly any colour on here, but I keep adding it to this piece of card just because, why not? It will just create another little background. And what I like about this is you can see, pick it up Tracy, I've got a lovely sort of dollop of water on here. So I can just leave that doing its thing, but I've got a little bit of that colour here. But can you see the grey where it's a little bit moody? I do like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the grey. So let's pick up the hickory smoke. Now you can see I'm working with little tiny bits of colour. So I'm going to add, so let's pick up the acrylic block and I want a little bit of moodiness down here. So let's add a little bit of grey. Can you see how you can change it instantly? You can just add, there's just a tiny bit of moisture on there, but I can now come along. I've not added too much moisture because you can see how much moisture is already in the piece as it is. can you see I've now got a little bit of grey here, but you can see that the acrylic block is slightly raised at the sides. That's only because you've got that moisture on there. That's the only reason that's happening. We'll just give that a wipe. And what this is a lesson in just take it steady, no rush, just enjoy the process. And you can see there's lots of moisture on there. You could have, let's move this out of the way, you could have another acrylic block on one side and then experiment with your colours. Whilst that one is just laying there, because the colours are beautiful, you can then create another. You see, you don't think about it, so I'm using crackling campfire, then we're going to use a little bit of rusty hinge, and I can't recommend enough doing a couple of prints, because then you can decide which one you like the most. So I'm then coming in with mustard seed, so crackling campfire, rusty hinge and mustard seed. And then we're going to come in with a little bit of that moody colour, which is the hickory smoke. So let's add a little bit of that hickory smoke. And then we'll just spritz our acrylic block. And this time I'm going to leave the drips in there. Maybe pick a little bit of that moisture up. And then I'm just going to add this down here, like so. So can you see it just moves? Look how much it moves. If you've then, as you press it, if you've got any coming out the side, just sort of blot that with your kitchen towel. So I think it's important to play around with your colours and see which you like the most. But if when you press it, it's coming out the sides, just give it a blot or just leave it. Can you see, look, it's moving back. Look at that. You either press it, like so, or you can just leave it to do its thing. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave that on its own. And then I'm going to lift this one up because I've left that. And you know, I absolutely love that background. Can you see? So what you're doing is normally we just add one layer from the acrylic block. Doesn't matter what size acrylic block you use, but normally I add one layer. But what I'm showing you here is you can actually keep adding to it as long as your card will take that. You can also see, can you see that you've got that where those inks have, you know, oxidized? You can see it here, sort of cloudy, chalky, it oxidizes. So it's wonderful. And if you can leave it a little bit, then all the better, because it just reacts all the more. So if I leave this, I should end up with a little dark patch. I can still press, look. You can see how much moisture in there. But what I want to do is I want to leave that and then show you that afterwards, what it looks like. So I particularly like this background, how it has that little bit of autumny colour, but a little bit of a moody touch to it as well with the greys. Now what I'm going to do is just dab the extra moisture that's on there. I'm just going to dab that up because I don't want any extra moisture on there, and it just saves me drying it if I don't wish. Can you see how beautiful does that look? Right, so now we're going to grab TE44. So we'll grab TE44 and we've got this beautiful pumpkin. So let's use our beautiful pumpkin. And you can see I've not given you a stamp that's just got a pumpkin on. And there's a reason for that, because I want you to use your stamps all year round. Hence that I've given you lots of different things on there, like your ivy, like your birds. My bird is not there, which means he's either in the packaging or he's flicked off. Are you in the packaging? Please don't tell me I've lost my bird, because that would not be very good. have I flicked him off? Oh, the concern on my face because I can't see my little beard. But sometimes they stick to other stamps, don't they? Let's just... Oh dear, I've lost my beard. Oh no. Can't lose my beard. And I can bet you anything it'll be the one beard that I want. Where's the beard? There's that one. Oh, I'm not happy about that. So I've now got to find my beard from somewhere, wherever he's gone. Where can he have gone? He's been in my packaging. I bet you I've flicked that off, you know. Just pulling it out of the... There he is, I told you. There he is. Do you know, makes me happy when I find them. So I did exactly what I said I'd done. I flicked it off the end of the little folder. Can't lose my beard. Right. Let's take the acrylic block. And we've got our pumpkin. And can you see how big that pumpkin is? It really makes a statement. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drop everything on the floor like I do, just so that you feel at home. So I'm going to take my little ink pads and colour with them like I do now, because I just love doing that. And I'm going to start with a dark colour. So I'm going to start with a little bit, do you know? No, yeah. Let's start with a little bit of lumberjack plaid. So I'm going to take the lumberjack plaid. And I'm just adding that lumberjack plaid just where I want it. So that's my dark colour, like you would with your pencils. I'm then going to take Crackling Campfire as my mid colour. And then I want to have a little bit of Mustard Seed as my paler colour, just in the centre. And then we'll grab, now obviously yes there's leaves on there, but I don't want to add the green, so I'm going to take my Hickory Smoke and just add a little bit of Hickory Smoke just on there. And I'm going to use my Hickory Smoke just to add a little bit of shading around here. Now you can see I've gone onto my acrylic block a little bit. And what I love is, look, there's no rush. I'm not panicking about rushing. There we go. Now there will still be some moisture in the card, so I'm not going to spritz with water. And I'm going to add my pumpkin just here. Now I can react this a little bit more with moisture, obviously, with my paintbrush. And what I'm going to do, just as I do with every ink pad, I'm just giving that time just to make an impression on there. And whilst we're doing that, I'm just going to bring this in again. Can you see it's still moving? Look, it's still moving. But I can see I'm going to have a really dark patch here and a lighter patch there. But I'm just going to leave it and let it do its thing. So let's just press this on here. There we go. Just look, I've got just fantastic. I've got shading, I've got depth, I've got light, just by colouring with the tiny ink pads. Just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I just love them. I'm then going to take a little bit, so I'm just going to have a think. We won't mess with that at the moment, but I was thinking I would like to bring a cat in, because I think a cat would look lovely. So I'm looking at TE36 numerical cats. So let's take numerical cats. And everything's dropping off my stamp because this is another well-used stamp. It's a good job I've got more than one acrylic block, isn't it, the amount of acrylic blocks I'm using. So I want my little cat just looking at the pumpkin, but his tail will come off the edge of my little oblong bit. You can have him down here if you want, but I want him there. Now I'm stamping onto the oxide background, which you know, it's got moisture in there, it's got loads of oxide on there, so we need to be mindful of that. So let's just give that lots of tapping. So lots of tapping, and then we'll add our little cat just here in the black. Now, even though it's a small stamp, I'm going to give that a little bit of time, because you want to give it time because of that oxide layer. Because of that oxide layer, you've no longer got this white surface that's more porous. So because of that, you just want to give it a little bit longer. Obviously, you can use your stamping platform and just go over and over and over, which gives you a little bit of a security blanket. There we go. Now, I'm going to show you. Can you see? I've got a neat layer, and then the oxide is sort of over the cat. Can you see? Yeah. So you want that to appear so that the cat, obviously, if I was using my stamping platform, I could just keep going over and over and over and over with the black, so it wouldn't be a problem. But what I want to show you is that if you haven't got a stamping platform, because there has to be ways around everything. Now, don't forget, I've not dried this at all. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with my micron pen, and I'm just going to go over my cat. So in a previous demo, you saw me use my stamping platform. Well, what I'm trying to show you is, if you haven't got a stamping platform, don't stand there and panic and say, it doesn't look the way I want it to. Just use your micron pen. There you go. Now it looks like my cat is in the foreground and not merged with the background. There's always ways that we can, you know, work out things. So I've got my lovely cat on there, which is just what I wanted. Okay. Oh, look, I'm dropping stamps left, right and centre. I've just dropped a number. Oh, there we go. Now what you need to do is, unlike me, who keeps ignoring it, all you need to do is just give the back of that stamp a little bit of a clean, because all it is that your fingerprints and embossing powders are all on there, so it stops it sticking. Just wipe it over and it sticks again. So what was I looking for now? It is October. So on here we've got the months of the year, and I want October. So I love the fact I can go to my stamps and I can find exactly what I'm looking for. Obviously we always want to build on that, but I love the fact that I do have a good choice. It's just, I do try to keep my acrylic blocks clean, but you know, I'm fighting a losing battle. So let's just ink this again. Now what you have to remember, this is absolutely saturated with oxide. So I'm going to put October on here, like so. And I can still feel the moisture in the card. I've still not dried it. Obviously, we can dry that as we go along if we wish. There we go, that's stamped perfectly. What you have to remember is here, there was even more saturation of oxide. And what I'm trying to show you is that there's always a way around things. So we've now got, and now we're using the permanent ink here, so that doesn't move with any of the moisture that we're adding. So let's now grab a brush. She says, I want a round one. Which one's this? Number 1, round, a round brush. I do love the round brushes. So let's take this as my paint palette, and we're going to use that little hickory smoke. So let's take a little bit of water and we'll pick that up. I've always got my kitchen roll here because you don't need too much moisture. You've already got quite a bit of moisture in your card. So what I can do now is I can just add a little bit of shading. Let's grab a little bit more of that pigment. So we pick that up and we can just add a little bit of shading. And yes, we've got other oxides on there, but that doesn't matter. Pick up a little bit of water. Just to add a little bit of shading. We want everything to be grounded. So we're just giving that a little bit of grounding. And then just make it so it's a little bit darker at the base there. Let's have a little tiny bit of water. And I just like to take my time, just getting things how I want them. Okay, so I'm using that oxide just to sort of bring a little bit of a shadow. Let's take that water now, and then we'll just blend that out. And because I'm using that pink frog card, it blends out beautifully. Now the reason, oh, I have to take this cardigan off, it's suddenly gone warm. So I want it a little bit, I've got a beautiful shade there, but I want it a little bit darker. So I'm going to add a little bit of my Inktense. Can you see how dark that Inktense is now? That's because there's already moisture in the card. So instantly I'm putting my pencil against that card and the moisture's in there. So we'll just blend this out. A little bit darker. There we go. Just so that we've got a little bit more shade. That's it. So I'm going to make sure my brush is clean now. That's it. And then I'm going to pick up the hickory smoke. So look how the pumpkin is coloured. It just looks lovely. It's like you hardly have to do anything to it really. So I'm going to give this a little bit of a dry, because if I water it, it's going to be quite, as in it flattens out the colour, but I like the textures with the open areas and everything by colouring it with the ink pads. Now, if you can let it dry naturally, then your card is not going to curl. By using my heat tool, I will cause that card to curl. It's what it does naturally. So let's just give So I often use my pencils, but you know, it looks lovely like that without even using any pencils, I think. Just gives it a different look. It's just wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I think it just gives it a really nice different look. I'm then going to use my Winsor & Newton ink. Oh, I've forgotten the lady's name now. It's Sandra who told me about this. Right, so I'm dangerous with ink, fluid ink. You should just put a little bit in your lid, just to be careful, particularly if you're anything like me. So I'm just going to touch around. I'm just going to add some little lighter touches just to bring a little bit of lightness. Now I don't want to add too much moisture, so I'm just going to come in just with a little touch. So I'm almost sort of hardly touching, and it's picking up some of the oxide, that colour, because it's very watery, so it will react. I'm not doing splatters, I'm painting with it. It's going to react slightly, but I want it to have a little bit in there. Now, if you want it to be pure white, then your bleed proof is going to do that for you, because it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's bleed proof. So what I'm doing is I am just lightening these areas slightly. Now you can do this with your Posca pen, absolutely, because I don't want it sort of pure white, if that makes sense, because I want it lighter but not pure white. And we can give that a dry. Let's turn that over. Let's close that lid, because I know exactly what I'm like. Now you could come in and you could, I'm still going to open it now because I keep deciding I'm going to tell you something else. So I could come in and I could still, you could come in with layers, you know, because you've dried your card, you can come in just with layers, just to add. So I'm not making it too false. There we go. Let's just, you could use that for your splatters as well if you wanted to. I'm just going to leave that to rest a bit. Now let's bring this card in. Let me just give this a little bit of a clean. Now this one we've just left, and you can still see there's still a little bit of movement there. But look at that, where the water's been, you can see that I've got that. You could also have something sort of in here. So instantly this sort of creates a scene where the water has lay. But you can see it's not gone through the card, but you can see there's moisture still there. So you've got another background, and that's why it's worthwhile creating a couple of backgrounds to see which one you want to use. I always think it's worth it, and now I've got a second background. So I'm now going to take a text stamp. So we've used October. Did we put October back? I do like to put my stamps back. Make sure my little cat is in there. Yeah. Oh no, it was the bird, wasn't it? It was. So let's put 36 back. And then you've also got your little stencils you could use as well. But I want to, let's grab a little bird. Which one do I want? That one, the one that went missing. I told you, didn't I? The one that went missing would be the one that I wanted. I told you that. Now with this one, I'm going to clean this little bead as well, because it's only not sticking because it's got so much sort of debris and things on the back. Poor little bead. So I'm going to take my black ink again. Is it that one? Yes. So I'm going to take my black ink, my Nocturne ink, just giving that lots of tapping. I can tilt my stamp to make sure that that's wet. And then I'm going to add my little bird just here. So just give that, and we haven't blotted anything yet, so we should blot that VersaFine Clair. Now, if you don't want to blot it, you can do what Heidi does. Heidi embosses with a matte embossing powder. You can emboss it with a clear embossing powder, then you don't have to worry if it smudges. But we all like different things, and that's why we create. So let's give this a little bit of time just to absorb onto that surface. There we go. Perfect. It's just having a little bit of patience. So what we can do then is if we grab some copier paper. So we take our copier paper, and I always think you should remember some good habits. So let's just give that a blot. There's nothing really there. So it's worked perfectly. Yes, we've got, you know, card, no moisture, sorry, no colour has seeped through. So it's wonderful, but you can still see there's moisture in there. But I'm rather smitten with colouring with the little mini ink pads. They're just lovely. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take a little text stamp. So let's put this one back, the TE44. So let's put our pumpkin back. Now, I personally don't like to leave oxide ink on my stamp, mainly because I'm a big user of VersaFine Clair, and because of that, I like to clean the oxide off so there isn't a layer of that oxide before I come and put my VersaFine Clair onto the same stamp. So I do like to make sure that that is cleaned off. That's just me. I then want a text stamp, and I'm going to use the lovely text on number 43. So there's a lovely text stamp. I keep moving that ink pad out of the way so that I don't use the wrong ink pad. So I've got the magnolia, and I'm going to use the lovely text stamp that's on there. And I'm not going to use an acrylic block, but I am going to go back to the hickory smoke. Again, there's still moisture in that card, so this stamping will be nice and soft. If you want sort of your permanent stamping with the oil-based ink, then you can use your VersaFine Clair Morning Mist. But I want like a soft bit of stamping so that I can just add a subtle layer. Just perfect. It's just lovely. And I can still see my October. It's as if the October was stamped last, not first. So I'm going to add a little bit of text here. So now I'm actually curling the stamp. So what I'm doing is I'm just curling the stamp a little bit, just so that I can get little bits of that text. So taking that text again, picking that up and just curling the stamp, and I can decide exactly how much of that text I want by just curling the stamp and just aiming a little bit of the text. Just wonderful, just so you can see. Really lovely. So we'll just give that stamp a clean, again not leaving that oxide ink on there. And I'm then going to look for that poor little Inktense pencil, and I'm going to add a little bit, and you can see the card is drying a bit now because it's not reacting as much here as it did here when the moisture was in there, because Inktense pencils, just like the oxides, react to moisture. So we'll just take a little bit of water, and then we'll just take some of that moisture off and just blend that. There we go. Just so that we've got that on there. I can then add some of my white splatters with my Posca pen, which will also pick up some of that colour. Now, if you don't want the October to be sort of covered in splatters, then just put a little piece of card over the top. And I'm sort of being mindful where I'm adding those splatters. So I've got the splatters in the background and here on the pumpkin. Just lovely, you don't need much else. So we'll just give this a little dry. I love backgrounds like this, it's so free, and it's just lovely because you end up with a different background each time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mat and layer that onto a piece of black card because it'll really pop on that black card. So let's take our adhesive, and you can see my card's all curling. So just, I'm convincing it which way it needs to go. It doesn't always listen, but you can also sort of, you can put it in between a heavy book or something like that. No problem at all. No, don't undo that, Tracy. So I'm just going to go for it. If you use double-sided tape, you won't have that issue because it'll just grab hold instantly. I'm one of those people that can't have something that grabs hold instantly because I never get it in the perfect place the first time. I do like it something that moves, that grabs hold but still moves, if that makes sense. Now, I like to pick this up, that's it. And then I can go down on the card once I've sort of got it roughly in place, and then I can just press. If there's an area that's going to stick up, which it might do, that's not a problem because I can see it's sticking up a bit there. I can always go in with a little bit more adhesive. And I'm just using the heat from my fingers just to make sure that sticks. Now, it grabs hold pretty quickly. So that's fine. I just like to make sure those edges are stuck down. There we go. And then we can add that to a 5x7 card blank. Let's make sure it's facing the right way. Add that to here. Preferably straight is usually a good thing to do, Tracy. This glue does grab hold quite quickly. But I do love a card when it's matted and layered, and I can still see a little gap there. Now don't forget, this is me. Because I've added so many layers, there we go. That's it. Just going to add a little bit of adhesive. That's it. Wipe that away. I can't have it sticking up, so I'm just going to give that a couple of seconds just to grab hold. Don't do this with mucky black fingers. I see some people crafting and the hands are like multicoloured with ink. I'd be panicking it would just transfer to my card. Not that it matters, I suppose. But there you go. There is your card with nice simple methods and ideas. But it's just lovely. It works really well. And then if you don't want to use your Posca pen and you want your white to be, you can use your pastel pencils, or you can just use your Prismacolor white, and you can just add a little bit of white just so that it's not quite so harsh, but you can add a little bit of white. Let me lift that up for you just so it's a little bit more subtle, the touches of white. But I'm really pleased with that. I love it. So I hope you enjoy giving that a go. Love to all, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.